here to talk about what she went through during COVID. Hi, Tiff.
So
good to see you. Thank you for coming on today. I'm so appreciative. You and I just want to put it out there that we spoke over the months. You and I have been friends. I've interviewed you on my podcast. You're a very well-known fitness expert, and we spoke about what you'd been going through during COVID. And at first you were very private about it because it's a hard thing to talk about because you had a mental health breakdown.
Yes.
And then you texted me, you said, you know, Carey, I might want to come on the show with you and Brandon and talk about this in hopes of helping other people. So just tell the audience a bit about what happened.
So I've had a very successful career in the fitness realm for quite a while, and I took a pretty big step back around 2019 to manage my daughter's music career. As you know, my daughter Jules was on season 18 of The Voice. As a minor, she had to go away for a while and live in a hotel and needed a guardian. I really stepped back quite a bit from my role in the fitness realm to cater to that, and during that time frame, my massive Instagram account was hacked, and I had no assistance getting it back from Facebook or Instagram, and I sort of said, I don't want to do what it takes to build that again. I wasn't willing to, and sadly, I sort of quit peddling. I think we all know that when we show up for ourselves each and every day with purpose and passion, it gives us a reason to wake up and walk through this world, and suddenly I stepped back, I put myself in a different position, and I just really quit showing up for myself. My husband and I went away to celebrate our 20-year wedding anniversary in Dubai, and as we were on the other side of the world, it began to shut down. We come back and, you know, everyone's living in a fear-based state. I'm, you know, looking at my young daughter with, you know, stars in her eyes for the future, and now she's part of a season that's going to air during a pandemic from their sofa at home. I just felt like I stepped into the most massive victim role I ever have in my life. The way in which I look at others and said, like, no, like, stand up and do what you should do. It's no one's responsibility but you. I began with that mindset. I would say it was a very insidious timeline where it just sort of like built upon itself, being forced at home with 3 kids and then suddenly homeschooling. I was really struggling with anxiety and depression and didn't realize how bad it was because the internal rumblings that we're supposed to listen to and sort of cater to, I started trying to stifle with alcohol and drugs. Clearly that is a recipe for disaster, and really took me to a deep, dark place. 2020, I blew a disc in my back, and I came to understand that it was from all the toxic negativity that I was carrying on, and I discovered meditation. So that was one way that I tried to crawl out from under the depression. Ultimately, I was still in the thick of it, and it took me over, and in November of last year, I had a mental breakdown. I didn't know what that was. I've never experienced anything like it, but I was so overwhelmed that I just gave up. I reached out to a physician of mine and I begged for medication to fix it. These things are often treated with a Band-Aid, and you know, medication-resistant depression is a very real thing for very many people. And I didn't want to slap a Band-Aid on it, but that Band-Aid that I took out of complete, like, was my Hail Mary, ultimately took me deeper. And that can happen with a lot of these drugs. I discovered some really, truly incredible doctors, advanced wellness and pain, having done some research with ketamine infusions and discovering the benefits for mental health. Along with PTSD. So my anxiety was off the charts. My PTSD is kind of a stacked, layered effect throughout lifelong trauma here and there. And I had a rupture, and it needed to happen. And I'm so pleased to say that I'm not where I'm going, but I'm on my way every day. The ketamine infusions that I utilized that are now available more readily than they ever have been. Sadly, they are not covered by insurance, but they were my lifeline. They helped shift my perspective. Nothing is a fix here, but it's a perspective shift, and kind of along with all these different modalities, I started to really put myself back together. A big team, but I've been most grateful to fire my psychiatrist because they've got one job and it's writing a script. So luckily I found sort of what was beneath the hood that needed to be addressed, and this will be lifelong for me. But as long as I'm aware that I will always be someone that needs to maintain a mental health hygiene, that's just what it is.
Well, first off, I want to say thank you for being open and sharing that part of your story. There's a lot to unpack there. So I want to first talk about some words that you chose where you said that you ruptured your disc in the lower part of your back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And what that sent me signals and saying, I do shamanism. And you ever heard the book, The Body Keeps a Score, right?
Yes.
So when trauma happens, we store that traumatic energy. We remember those traumatic events in the lower part of our brain, but we store that energy in the lower part of our spines. Okay, so when you said that, I'm like, your body had probably stored up too much trauma that it didn't know what to do, and it was eventually causing you a lot of pain.
Oh yeah.
That being said, was there trauma early on in your life that you had yet to heal from? Because what I will also tell people is the pandemic only exacerbated pre-existing traumas that had lived inside of all of us. So the pandemic in and of itself was a traumatic event.
Yeah.
But for those of us who experienced, because I relapsed in 2020, the pandemic caused my relapse after umpteen years of continuous recovery because of unhealed trauma that I never healed from. So when the pandemic hit, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I began violently shaking every single night. So where you had a ruptured disc, I was experiencing huge shakes at night, and that caused my relapse. So I'm just wondering, was there early childhood trauma that you experienced that perhaps you didn't heal from that eventually caught up to you?
Very much. That I would say it's a possibility. I think it's fair to say it's a certainty. I haven't been able to completely unpack from 0 to 7.
The early childhood trauma.
Yeah, but I was a child that attempted suicide in my freshman year of high school. I wrote about it in my book. I didn't want to die, but I needed help, and something was wrong inside, and I didn't know how to ask. I also battled disordered eating much of my life, which is also why when I became a very successful fitness presence, I have 11 magazine covers to my name, which was such an incredible feat for me. I didn't want it like this glossy highlight reel like people say, social media. I needed young girls to say, if they wanted to say I want to be like her, they needed to see that I fell down 1,000,000 times before I got on that cover. And that's the value in sharing this. I live out loud, and I seem to recover and try to heal even more outwardly. And that is something I've just thrown myself on the cross for, but I like to make my mess my message, because if it resonates, like something about you, and I know we have a lot of similar unique things in our history, but until you really pinpoint some of those things, you're right, they're coming back for you.
Yes.
That's why I say this pimple needed to pop. This rupture was going to happen. If it didn't happen now, it's going to happen down the line. You can't operate like that long term without snapping. And I realize now how powerful my anxiety has been through my lifetime. It's been a driving force of a lot of my success. Never in my wildest dreams did I connect those two and see that there's a healthier way to drive yourself or to manage that, or this was coming down the line,
I am so forward thinking, and I've been in recovery a very, very, very long time. And I am absolutely forward thinking when it comes to modalities and different sciences and different medications that are out there. And we're going to be talking a lot about microdosing shrooms. There's studies being done on microdosing LSD and hallucinogenics to help people who have suffered a lot of trauma. Ketamine clinics are all over the valley now. And it is a resource that a lot of people who've experienced trauma are going to, rather than your other traditional pharmaceuticals. And I'm just wondering, tell me some of the impacts that the ketamine treatments have done for you and what you've gone through.
So, again, I want to preface it with it's not a magic drug, and there are these places popping up all over, and that's why I want to caution people, go where you've researched, go where you know they are legitimate. If they're going to hook you up to a strand and a bunch of people are all being infused and no one's catering to that, absolutely no. Advanced Wellness and Pain. Doctors Wong, Latham, and Sharma are my heroes. They provide what is called a 6-pack, because when you have severe trauma or anxiety and you're starting from a more elevated state, as I was, they want 6 up front, separate treatments, infusions rather, separated by about 2 days each. So you get those in the first 2 weeks, and then you kind of evaluate. And they sort of knew up front that I was going to be a little bit more than a 6-pack. I'm on about my 9th or 10th infusion now. I had one in early May. I will only be utilizing them once a quarter for like a little touch-up. And there's high-level CEOs that utilize this just to really up-level themselves. This is like the 5th gear of personal development. This is like the benefit of what meditation does, but it gets you right in the void immediately. And so to go in there and be able to unpack and just lean into the experience, it's a very, very light dose of ketamine, which is a drug used in the OR to put people under for surgery. Traditionally, but they have found this benefit to where it takes your problems, say these are your problems, and it puts them right here. So now you gain a greater perspective to really say, okay, this isn't the end of the world. I need to cater to this. This is a serious issue, but I'm going to breathe through it. I'm going to do the things that I need to do, and just sort of step back, slow everything down, and become the silent observer of your world so that you can kind of catch those things. So I think that's the greatest gift that it's given me, is just to really kind of reevaluate my perspective in a lot of things, because we can get so lost in our mind.
I'm gonna have to have you on the podcast. I'm gonna have to have you on my podcast. I'd love to go deep on all that stuff with you.
And you've got a lot of modalities that you can share that I want to look into as
awesome.
well. So.
Well, that's what we're committed to doing, and so thank you so much again, Tiff, for being here to share the story
Thank you for having
with our
me.
viewers and listeners. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.